welcome to Our Spain. Buenos dias. How's it going?
It's going good. Muy bien, Tanya.
Muy bien. And you have an Our Spain today to
I
share.
do. So it is the end of the school year, I think, for most people in the Northern Hemisphere.
It
And
is.
if
Whew,
it hasn't
yes.
already ended. And next week, both my daughters are going away on their end of the year class trip, which is a thing here that we're not used to. But they're both scheduled at the same time. So I'm going to have a house of a couple nights without my kids, which has never happened because, I mean, I had one kid not home before for sleepovers, but never at the same time. So this Osprey could turn into an Osprey, and I'm calling you at 3 in the morning, being I'm lonely and I'm having a panic attack. What am I doing with my life? I have no one here to love me. I don't know. Who knows? Or no
So
one to nag me.
you never had them like last year at the end of the school year they didn't go together on a school trip at the same time?
They both had school trips, but no, they were separate. So it was like
Ah.
it was a carrot in front of my face. This is how
Right.
life could be, but we're keeping you at home with one, which was also really good though because I did get to have alone time with one child, and we went out to dinner, and then the next time I
That's
had alone
nice.
time with another child, and
Yeah.
we had like a daddy daughter night alone without the other one.
That's nice. But today we are talking about, which kind of goes into, how to get your kids adjusted to moving, how they get adjusted when you're here. And I think this is a little bit like something that would apply to moving anywhere, even
Right.
across to a different part of the country that you're in. But we're obviously focused on Spain specifically. But I think that a lot of this applies. You and I had extremely different ways of doing this. I don't think our parenting styles are that as dramatically different as this situation is different.
No, our situations were different. We were coming over at different times,
Hmm.
and thus, I mean, I think you should tell a little bit about your story, like why you had to do things the way you did, and then, I can talk
And
about
then you can
mine.
tell yours.
Yeah.
So we had a um, we the situation that we had didn't allow us to have the preparation that we would have probably liked. But then the more preparation, I don't know if we would have done anything any better, to be honest, because it
Hmm.
is what it is at the end of the day. We had been talking about moving for a little bit, but then when we realized that Brexit was happening, we realized we had to move like
Hmm.
immediately because we if we didn't move immediately, we would have been stuck in the same position as every other Americans and the British, which is now you have to get visas and you're not allowed to work unless you can have a job, which we didn't there. So it was for us. It was like if we move now and we can get our residency before Brexit, then we have residency to work, and that was a
Right.
huge like thing for us that we needed to be able to work and we wanted to have that flexibility. We were also moving closer to family. So my family in England and
Hmm.
my husband's family in Morocco. So we were kind of moving back closer to where we were from. Not
Right.
where we
Right.
none of us are from Spain, so Spain was a new culture and a new experience for us. But we were also moving closer. So maybe that was a little less stressful for us in that sense because we were moving back to an area that we were, even though we hadn't visited Valencia, we were familiar with Spain and Spanish culture and everything. So I think that was a little different. But when we were moving, it was like, oh my god, we have to do it now. Like it wasn't like, oh, let's
Right.
plan this for a year or two and see how it works out. And we also had a business where we had restaurants, so we needed to make sure before we told everybody that we were closing the restaurants that we needed to make sure all of our employees were taken care of and they all had new jobs. And so this was
Hmm.
something that was very important to us that we wanted to make sure we didn't that didn't create a problem for anybody, right? So
So
we had
you
a
had to put
lot going on.
and you had to put a lot more preparedness for the people who weren't moving versus the
Yes.
people who were moving.
Absolutely. And I think for us, I mean, that was important. And then we had a 7-year old who were like, how we can't. So going back to the kid part of this episode,
Right.
it's like we couldn't prepare her for months and months and months about this because how much do you tell a 7-year old about something that needs to stay quiet until there's a point where it can be let out for everybody to know? And
Right.
so, she's a real trooper. And I think the benefit is, had she been a teenager, that would have been really hard. But because she was younger, her family and so us were kind of her like world, right?
Right.
So even though she had friends, and we got really lucky because we were moving closer to family, but also, so the logistics when we did tell her was like, yeah, this is going to be great and it does make sense. But
Right.
also she had her very best friend, and this was pure luck. Her very best friend, her dad's in the Navy, and they got their papers to move at exactly the same time as us, and they went to Japan. So
Oh,
it was
gotcha.
like score.
So you're like, see, it's not just us. Other people do this as well.
And your best friend is moving, so you're not leaving your best friend behind. Her
Right.
best friend was leaving too, and it
She
was
was
like,
already ditching you, honey. She
well,
was.
I don't think that was the word we were going for. It's more like, look, she's moving too, so it's like even if we stayed, she wouldn't be here, and we're moving closer to family. So we did do a lot of the family aspect of it, which is we were moving closer to family. That was the preparation. We're going to be able to see your cousins more. You're going to get to experience Morocco more because we hadn't
And like
really
you
been
said,
able to do that.
you were just the family unit. So, and at age 7, there is only so much you can prepare a 7-year-old for because their mind can only handle so much.
Yeah.
And my girls were a little bit older, and it was different. We planned this. We started the idea of moving during COVID, while we're all just sitting on the couch staring at our belly buttons, wondering how life could be, right? Like out in the outside world.
You had a lot of opportunities to plant a lot of little seeds that could grow and get be discussed, right? It was very
Right.
different.
And we were and for a year it was just fantasy talk too, right? It was just like, look at these houses in Nashville, look at these houses in Savannah, Georgia, look at these houses in Italy. We were like doing this kind of massive like all over thing, and then the kids went back to school and all this stuff. And then I had time without them in the house when they finally went back to school, and I was like,
Right.
no, I want to move. Like I want to get out of here.
So how did you guide them? Like, so there must have been a point because you're still the parent, and I know
Right.
you're definitely a parent that keeps your girls very involved, and everyone gets a voice and all this kind of thing. So in the environment of that situation, there must have been a point where you realized that you wanted to go to Valencia. And that
Yes.
I don't like, did that happen and then you had to kind of pull the girls into that, or did you all decide together that Valencia was where you wanted to go? Like, how much of a parent were you in the moving process with them?
So I mean, I was the parent and the decision, because then when I then had time with it, it was like, do we go to Italy? Do we go to France? I was like, okay, I need weather similar to California. I was like, these are my requirements for a happy life, and then it
Right.
was just Spain checked off all the boxes for our budget, right? So things in private, I had to worry about private schools because they were older, and I was worrying about acclimation and language and all of that kind of stuff. And so for me, it was Spain, and then it was I just started talking to different schools online, having
Were the
online.
girls on board with Spain, or was one of them like, we want to go to Nashville? Like, was there any kind of
No, there
dissonance in
wasn't
the
because it was.
ranks?
There wasn't. I mean, they were all excited about all the places we looked at because
Okay, all
it meant
right.
bigger houses. It meant bigger things than we had in California, right? It all meant better things.
Oh,
And
speaking of that, you did like us promise a pool and a dog, right? This is also part of the process
I
eventually.
did, and
Okay.
they did not get a pool and a dog,
But they're
and
still
now
happy.
they're still
They're still
happy.
happy.
And
Yeah.
they don't want a dog anymore. They look at them, they're cute, but then they see the responsibility of the dog, and now they don't want the dog. So that's good.
Right.
I still want a pool, but I don't want the responsibility of a pool. So
No, you really don't.
there's that.
Well, I'm just saying there's like the things that you promise, and then there's a reality when you get there that doesn't always work out. And I think I would say we did get the dog in the pool, and you didn't get the dog in the pool, and all our three girls I think are equally happy here. Like, that's not, there are things maybe that you say that maybe don't work out, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. And it was once we got our foot on the ground, right? So it became this Spain idea. I was interviewing schools by myself, and we did plan a trip before we moved, and that was part of the getting them on board, but they were already on board, and I really just kind of just it was it was a little bit of a superfluous trip because I already knew what school we wanted to get into, but I did want to see it though because we had the time and the ability to do it. Let's go see just to make sure. There was an element of getting the girls on board, but they were already on board. But it did help with them knowing where they were going versus just getting on a boat across the sea and having no idea what they were getting into. They
Right.
already
So
knew what
you,
school they were
yeah.
going to.
So you
They
didn't have any, the girls, you didn't have any issues with anybody not being on board. So that sounds like it went quite smoothly for you. Because I'm sure there are people out there that maybe have a kid that maybe doesn't want to move. I don't think
Well,
either
and
of us
how I
had that
got them on
experience.
board was also, I hate to say this word, but the family team, my family team, I got them involved, meaning like the school teachers and the school counselors and all of our family friends. Everyone was like, especially that school year before we moved, when it was a definite. We had taken the trip
Right.
to Spain in the fall of that school year and came back. And all the teachers were very excited for the girls, so they helped build their excitement up, being like, what a wonderful experience, this is amazing, you're lucky, you're all of those things. So they were like, oh, okay. And none of our friends were like, don't go, which I've said this before. I'm wondering how, if they were really friends at all, if they were pushing the door out, pushing
Well,
us
I
out
will
the
say, I
door.
think it's funny that you have like a family. I was kind of making fun of you having a family team, but I get it. And it's just, we didn't have time for that per se. But
Right.
we did. And we also moved mid year. So we
That's
didn't
really
wait till
hard
the end of the year. I don't know. I think it made getting into the schools easier.
because they had a space.
Because
You knew they
if
already
they
had
have
a
space,
space.
you're in. You're not competing with everybody for the new
Right.
year. So I don't know. There may be some benefits. I mean, this was part of this sort of rush that we had. It meant that we couldn't wait till the end of the year, the school year. So we moved in March, and I think part of that made it very easy to get into the school. So I'm not sure that I'm necessarily recommending that, but there may be an aspect there that people want to look
So
into.
then let me ask you a question. I think this would be very useful for our audience. Is if you did it in the middle of the school year, when did you contact the school about if they had a space? So I mean, I think a lot of people think about moving in the summertime, but if people are like, I want to move now, this is the opportunity, or my job's ending, we're just wasting money if we stay here 6 more months until the school year is over. When did you contact the schools to kind of?
Literally like 2 months before we moved.
Okay.
And I think it was a different time as well. Um, we've so I think I don't know. I think we got lucky because I've spoken to other people that moved. She didn't take any tests to get into the school. I mean, I don't know. It was a very different scenario than, so I think it was maybe this little perfect storm situation. And I think, in that regard, I don't know if it can be duplicated. But for
Right.
us, that's what had to happen. And, we were also lucky in a way, I guess, that we were living in the DC area and there's a lot of movement in the schools there. Zeno had already had various friends leave. Like I said, her friend was already scheduled to leave. So we also came from a place where people moved, and she knew that because she'd had friends move.
Right.
And us moving therefore wasn't this totally bizarro thing that was happening. And that was maybe gave us a little bit of a prep that we didn't even do on purpose because
Okay.
of where we were living, right? So the idea of us moving was, and like I said, I think because we were moving closer to family, it made a lot of sense. But so when you talk about the family team, is that what you called it?
The family
Yeah,
team, yes.
the family team. I just love that, and I love that you have that as a single parent too, because I think you need that as a lot, and I think everybody needs that. We just maybe don't call. I've just never called it that, but
Right.
she had her teachers and her friends, and like exactly the same as you. We had a lot of people. All of our friends, nobody were like, why are you doing it? Not
Right.
one person. They were like, oh my God. Like most of them were just like, when can we do it?
Right.
Like it wasn't, nobody was, oh my God, why are you doing it? What's going on? Even our best friends were like, this sucks, but we get it.
Right.
Kind of situation. So everyone was being very positive. We didn't plan it, but what you said you kind of planned, I think, is what happened for us naturally.
And to be honest, I needed my family team to say, because I needed the boost too, because I think I was more scared than my kids, because I'm the grown up moving across the world with my children with no clue of what I'm kind of doing once we put our feet on the ground, right? It's just like, okay, let's just do this. I've always wanted to live
Yeah.
in Europe. I'm going to make my dreams come true. I'm going to, back then I'm like, I'm going to be 50. I only have so many more times around the sun. Like, I've got my kids, like I got to show them how to live life.
I think
And-
it's very impressive because I think a lot of people are doing this as a couple, and I think you have that other person to kind of fall back on, and you didn't have that. So I think that's very impressive to do that with your kids, at that age, with them and having them on board and moving. So I think it sounds like they were acclimatized quite well. In order to go, and that was all the things. Was there anything else you did ahead, or should we skip into how we sort of get them going once we got here?
I mean, I think the other thing is that we did is we know you only brought suitcases and you had a different moving experience, but you did a similar thing. Is you made sure you brought some of home, whether it's stuffed animals or books or something. I brought our artwork, but we brought a few stuffed animals. I was more
Mm-hmm.
ruthless, I think, than you were with toys and stuffed animals because my girls were also older. So there was like,
Right.
we're not bringing My Little Ponies that I probably would keep until you're 45 if we stayed in one place
We
for the
have
rest
all
of
the
our
My
lives.
Little Ponies. Yeah, I literally like don't tell Jawad. I hope he's not listening to this one. We literally like I packed up Xena's room like, because of course because of the time frame I was like I wanted her room to kind of start to resemble her room there when we moved, and I was like I
Hmm.
basically I mean I went through her stuff a little bit, but it was like we packed up all of her stuff and then we saw how much room we had left for other things because I wasn't gonna we had actually she had two giant tigers that we had got that Jawad had got from her. He had ordered this giant tiger at one point and it never showed up, so he got another one got sent to him, and then like 2 months later the first one like randomly showed up. So
Okay.
she had these two giant tigers that I was just like, I'm really sorry, but this is really the only thing that
That's
we
not coming.
cannot bring, these giant tigers. And then
So
there was
her
also
room looked like Siegfried and Roy's house. Is what you're telling me?
Oh, totally. Yeah, no, it was awesome. And then she had this giant unicorn, right? Which was something that another giant. So those were the three things I'm like, you're gonna have to find a friend to give those to. That was the only things that she really had to give up. And
Hmm.
then when we moved here, about a year after we moved here, we were in, I think, Teddy, one of those
Hmm.
stores. They had the giant unicorn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so she still has a giant unicorn. It's just not the same one, but it's the exact same one. Like
Right.
visually, it's not the
Right.
exact same one of hers, but I was like, oh my god, there's no way we can't buy this unicorn because it's the exact one we made you leave at home. But
Right.
yeah,
Right.
so she got to bring. I mean, we had 12 bags. What 11 of them were stuffed toys, probably. So,
Right.
but it
Yeah.
was nice. Yeah.
They got to bring like one stuffed animal with us on like the trip, and then the rest were in, and it was very few that were
Wow.
brought over. I mean, we were pretty ruthless, but I mean that was also they were older than Xena
Yeah.
was when we did it. I mean, Paloma was 10, I think, when we moved. No, Mara was 12, no 13, something
So
like that.
13.
We'll go
So
with that.
Amara was Xena's age now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she was like, I can get rid of this baby stuff. And
Yeah.
but I was like, do you love it? Let's get it. So we went through a lot of the stuff. And ironically, we brought some of like the little baby children's books. I'm like, I can't get rid of those. And like they haven't been cracked. I'm like, those probably could have stayed. But no, I'm
Right.
happy we
Right.
have them. Maybe one day that'll bring a happy memory. They'll remember dad reading them this story. Um, but yeah, I think that was pretty much all that we kind of did, and then it was, and they were, what I said was really fun for them. I'll just bring this up too, is we were having these yard sales in front of our building, and the girls were
Mm-hmm.
really involved with that because they both love cash. And so
Right.
they were like, yeah, we need some more money. And I was like, go out there. I'll stay inside because you've got the faces to move this stuff.
Totally.
And then they
So
made
long as they get
signs.
to keep the
We're
money.
moving to Spain. We need money. They made all these like so desperate, sad
Oh.
signs. It was awesome.
And then yeah, we're so sad. We don't want to move to Spain. How was it with their friends? Like, did you do any special? Like, we had quite a few sort of get-togethers, like the week before we were leaving, where we got to go around and say like a proper evening, a proper goodbye to everybody individually, and then
Yeah,
we did a group thing as well.
we had one of our friends throw us like a going away party, so we had that at her house, and then um they had like sleepovers with their friends, because it was a process. It wasn't just like the last time, and then we left in the middle of in the middle of
Mm-hmm.
the summer, and so, um, yeah, I mean, we had play dates, but I wouldn't say like real events. Like I said, one friend had a going away party for us at the house, um, and they were texting, and on their way here they were texting, and then the friendships, I dissolve is not the word. You have these friends. I mean, I hope these friends of theirs are still for life, but they're more focused on their friendships here. They're more, and the other ones are
Mm-hmm.
focused on their friendships there, and there's a time zone change. But I think they do. My older one definitely. My younger one doesn't have a phone yet, so her friendships unfortunately are her back home friendships are over. I hate to say it because they're just not. She doesn't have a way to communicate with them, and now
No,
it's been
but
so
I
long.
do think dissolve is a good way to
Yeah.
do it because I mean when we came over we went straight into lockdown and it was COVID, it was March, and So Xena was communicating a lot with her friends back
Mm-hmm.
then. And so if we kind of skip a little bit into like the first few months here and getting them acclimatized, like obviously ours was a very unusual situation, but I think in some ways it helped because we initially we had been invited to a birthday party from the WhatsApp group from the school that we were going to
Mm-hmm.
go to on the first weekend that we got here, which was so awesome. And I would highly recommend people trying to connect with parents in the school or parents or somehow getting into a parent group wherever they're going to get your kids to meet new friends wherever you're going
Mm-hmm.
immediately, because that to me is the, if your kids are happy and they've met some friends, they're gonna be fine. But if they're sitting around and they're not socializing, they're not doing anything. So when we landed, obviously the birthday party was something that was, we all got excited about going to, but then of course it got canceled because we were on lockdown by that point.
Right.
And then, but what did happen was that she was playing Minecraft and chatting with friends because that was, everyone was at home. So her friends in
Right.
America were at home, not going to school. She was, so we just kind of adjusted our time because we could, and
Mm-hmm.
she maintained those friendships really tightly for several months actually. And then we also had a lot of people within the school group who obviously felt incredibly sorry for us. We were just like the really poor people, right? That came over, and we had like no friends here, no family here, straight into lockdown, stuck in an Airbnb. So a lot of the parents from her school reached out and were trying very hard to help her make friends with people in her class. And so we were
Uh-huh.
like also incredibly lucky because of that environment was a very, it was an environment where everybody really was trying to help each other, and it put us in a place where we made some friends in that time period, and she made some friends from that time period that priceless, that we maybe we wouldn't have made
Right. Right.
because of that. But I do think what I learned from that is get out and meet friends. Like get out and have your kids meet friends. Like you're an adult, you can take care of it. You can figure out how to meet friends, and maybe they'll be the parents of your kids' friends. But if your kids can meet friends and outside of school, and especially if you're coming in the summer, because most people are coming in the summer and then they're here for months before school starts,
Right.
right? That would be the ideal plan because you need to get situated before school starts, right? So in that time period, organize some stuff for your kids. There's plenty,
Right.
plenty, plenty of ways to do it.
Now, did your school, because you moved here in the middle of the school year, did they facilitate this WhatsApp group connection for you? Were they like, here's the WhatsApp group for your year? Like, how did you
The
get
what the what
involved?
scrap the what
At
scrap group.
WhatsApp?
Yes, I think we've had a lot of issues with our school trying to get the new parents into the WhatsApp group when they first come into the school, and it has not been very fluid. And that's just been this ongoing thing. But because I think we landed in the middle of the year, it was like, yeah, here. And also we needed to be connected because now we were doing online learning. So also there were like group Zoom calls with the class and things that we went straight into as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, I
there
was gonna
was a
say
lot
that
more.
sounded pretty beneficial for the move. I mean, horrible to be stuck in your apartment for 6 months, but now you get face to face and you see the other parents walking by. Where I don't know any of
Right.
I mean, I know some of my girls' friends' parents, but
Mm-hmm.
but not a lot. You know, like yeah.
No, definitely
And
when they're
now they're
younger.
older because in Paloma, when we first moved here, she was still in the lower school, so there was a WhatsApp group for the year group because it's just one
Mm,
class. And once you go into the upper school, there are no more year groups. There's no more WhatsApp groups. I'm involved in like a new moms group, which is all the ages, but like for like my
right.
daughter's years, there's no way to be connected. And as kids get older, even in the States, you're further removed from their fold, right? Their lives
I can
and
see how that would happen. I think what's interesting about our WhatsApp group is that the group hasn't changed. We just keep changing the name every year.
okay.
Right? Which makes sense, right? So the WhatsApp group hasn't moved, but at some point during the summer or at the end of the year, some parent, like I did it last year, it doesn't matter who does it, we all have admin rights to it. Like somebody goes in and changes the name and changes the picture, and we become the next grade.
Okay.
So it's always, so I have a feeling that this, as long as there's parents that want to do it, this group will go through because they're still like, hey, exactly what you're talking about. Hi, has anyone got an email about when this concert's happening? Like all these
Right.
sorts of things, right? What's going on? There's still there is still a parent delegate for the class, but I think people are less interested in what that parent does now. When Zena was younger in the younger grades, that was a very active. Oh my God, we need this, we need this, we need this. You know what I mean? There was a lot of stuff that the
Right.
parents wanted. And I think you also want less for your child in school. Once you've been in a school for a while, they get older, they're more doing stuff for themselves, and you're not as
Right.
involved as a parent in making sure things are getting done. And that's definitely something the school also has happened. So,
Right.
but this WhatsApp group, I'm assuming will go all the way up to the end if parents are still
It's still wanting
interested. But
it.
it's got quieter and quieter and
Hmm.
quieter as the grades have got higher, for sure.
Right. Right.
So yeah, it was the school that facilitated that group, and it was probably the parent delegate. So to that point, when you move when your kids are younger, it's easier to get involved in stuff and facilitate things. I think when your kids are older, there just isn't that
There just is
as
that, and,
much.
and their school every year has a new parents' night, like you when the
Mm-hmm.
school year starts, and now we're not invited to it anymore because we're not new parents. But it did help
Oh, okay.
for
Yeah.
us that first year to at least recognize some faces, and we've talked about this before. There's these WhatsApp groups of like teen groups citywide, right? These expat groups. So
Yeah.
I've seen parents from my daughter's school at these events, and they know other parents, so that helps, and that helps me acclimate because just as long as we're acclimating our children, we have to acclimate ourselves to life here,
It
or at
does
least
force
me.
you a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
need to, as a single parent, like I have to. Otherwise, I'm just at home making dinner and grocery shopping, which I was doing back in LA. So,
Right. Well, and speaking of single parenting, I mean, because of the scenario when we landed, there was a point where my husband had to leave the country because he was running out of how long he could stay here. So he left, and he couldn't get back. And I there was another person in our class whose husband was also out of the country and couldn't get back in. So
hmm.
we were single parents for like 3 or 4 months together. Like we were like, well, if we're both going to be single parents, let's just do it together. And at the
Right,
time there were restrictions that you can only hang out with one other family. Like they went through all these phases here in Spain. So that was that. And so we're like, we'll be each other's little family. We'll be our little
right.
bubble. And so we also obviously, but you create a very strong friendship with people when you go through that sort of things together as well. But I do think, like you said, with the WhatsApp groups, like if your kids are older, there are WhatsApp groups for that too. So
Right.
just get in on it, and
Just get
don't
in
leave
on
it
it.
for you. Yeah, don't leave it for your kids to do. I mean, I think I mean, no matter how social your kids are, they need an environment to be social, to
Right.
find those people.
And there's these hangout things that my kids don't necessarily enjoy going to, but I'm like, you're going whether or not, because it's other faces you don't see. You never know who's a new
Mm-hmm.
connection, and it's just helps you in life to be able to say hello to strangers
Absolutely.
in a
Yeah.
safe setting where you're supposed to say hello to strangers, right? It's
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know that there's anybody that I've ever met that enjoys being in a group of people they don't know. I mean, nobody likes that. Some people handle it better than others, but nobody really enjoys that. And even if it looks like other people are enjoying it, they're just doing it for that reason, to get
right,
in, right?
to get in, right,
And so I think to that point, I think as far as being here, I think one thing we did touch on this a little bit on our last episode, so I don't want to go into it too much, but I think when it comes to getting your kids acclimatized to Spain or any other country, if you're going in language, how much of the language do you want your kids to know? I think
right,
that's a really important thing to consider. Whether you just want them to get a little bit of Spanish and just be able to like order things at the restaurant and go and do things, or do you want them actually to be fluent?
right.
And there's a
And,
big, big, big
and that's the
difference.
difference between you know, acclimating versus assimilating, right? So now we're
Yes.
at this, and I think we're both at that point. Like I want my kids to be assimilating into more of the culture than just acclimating, and how would we do that? And
Yeah.
I, we did talk about this last episode, so we're not going to repeat it. But
Yeah, so we both of us made the decision to go into an English speaking school for our girls, and I think at the time, under the circumstances, that made a lot of sense for us. We spoke no Spanish, any of us, and I think that was not. And then because of COVID, I think that did help. that we didn't have to deal with trying to speak Spanish to the teachers that were then speaking in Spanish through Zoom to Zeno. I think it would have been, I think we might have left. I don't
Right.
know if we would have actually decided. I think that would have been so hard for all of us under this, and under the,
Oh,
and of
I
course
couldn't even
from,
imagine trying to do that, right?
no.
So it
Yeah,
was it
and
was hard enough for me to get a TV when we first arrived. Let alone
right.
that.
So I think, but I mean, ultimately, definitely what we wanted for Zena was that she actually is fluent in Spanish when she reaches 18. That was something that we thought we would get through the school, and that is not the case. And you can
Right.
definitely go back and listen to the previous episode about that. But I think both agree that that isn't happening for anyone really in the English speaking schools.
Right. Not a way us English speakers want it to happen for sure, right? So it's
Yeah.
I mean, the Spaniards are becoming fluent English speakers, but it's not the other
With the
way
help
around.
of our children.
With the
Yes.
help of our children and all of that. But it's not happening for us. And that's
Yeah.
conversations that me and my girls are having. How are we going to increase their language? It's something that I think we are going to discuss this summer, and not necessarily switching schools, but how are we going to up our game? I think I brought it up last week, I'm just starting to text message them in Spanish, so they have to figure
Yes.
things out, like how are we going to learn more, and then take it from there. So
Yeah, and I do think that there's things that you can do to improve your Spanish, and I think anybody that you speak to that's here that's who's native English speaking will tell you that it's a lot harder than people tell you to actually learn Spanish when you're not speaking it at home and you don't have someone in your life that's speaking Spanish to you permanently. So we do have collectively that idea, oh, just go to the country and you will learn, is actually not how it works.
well, it always reminds me, I don't know if you were ever a Simpsons fan, but do you remember that episode? This is a long time ago. This is like early Simpsons.
I have not watched enough to get on board with this, but I'll enjoy the story.
So Bart Simpson gets sent to France, like in an exchange student program, but there was something shady, and he gets sent to, like, I don't know, working someone's farm or something like that, and he escapes, and he's trying to ask for help, and he is like trying to ask for help, and everyone's looking at him because no one speaks English, and he's like mad because he's been there for 6 months, and he's like, I've been here for 6 months, mom, do, and then next thing you know, he just speaks fluent French, and I was hoping for that Eureka moment that one day I would just be walking down the street.
If you went to work on a farm, that might have been the case if you
Right.
had done that instead of living with your girls in a nice apartment.
A nice apartment, going to an English school, hanging out with expats. So
Yeah. So, I mean, I will say, like, it's been harder for us. I mean, I'm learning a lot of Spanish in certain ways, but no way am I near the fluency that I thought I would be after 5 years. And I think it's okay for an adult. I mean, I have my expectations and I can change my expectations. But when you're thinking about what you want for your children, we are now in the process of moving Xena from the English speaking school to a Spanish speaking school,
Right,
because
right.
we feel like this is our last opportunity to give her that as a gift, of part of the gift of moving
Right,
to Spain.
yes.
And we are realizing that if after 5 years we are still not even close to being in any way fluent, and she has a lot of Spanish friends, but they all speak English.
Right.
And it's been a really, really tough decision, and obviously it means leaving the school that all her friends are in. But we had a discussion the other day, and it was like, look, I feel it, and I was like, you must be feeling it too, that there's a level that you're not getting to with your friends, and there's a level of things that you're not participating in because of the fact that you're not fluent and super confident in Spanish. And she did agree to that feeling, and I was like, because that's how I feel. I feel like I'm here and I can get things done and I can chat with one person in Spanish and I'm kind of okay, but I'm not at all just jumping in as a culturally with everything. And I want
Right.
that for her, and that was something that we wanted for her, and it unfortunately we didn't realize that wouldn't happen through the schools. So we're now moving, and so and she's 13. We feel like we have a window there of education where if she has a hard time for 6 months or something, we can manage that at this age. If we wait,
it will bounce
that's gonna
back,
be
and
harder.
it won't show up on transcripts going to colleges.
But
No,
hopefully not.
It will correct itself for sure.
Yeah, I think so. So I think we were at a good age for that, but it's an incredibly hard decision to make that now.
Right. I will say other things to consider that we did when we moved here, and it was the summer, right? So we had time, but to acclimate my kids to life was doing normal things that we would have done back home. Like going to the movies was a big night out for us because it was like there's the like it was like this we're in this strange land, but these things exist here. To going to
Yes.
and they have
Yep.
English, they have movies once, maybe one or two showings a night at a certain theater that will be in the original English. So we went to the movies and
If
we
you're
got
if
popcorn.
you're if you're in the city, you have
If
to
you're
go into the city for that,
if,
by the way.
it's the city folk talking, and
The city folk, but that's okay. We're close enough. We can go into we go into the mall area for
do they
movies, and they
not
have
do
them in
that up
English.
in Haran City or those?
Yes,
Do they have
they do.
English?
Yeah,
The
they
English
have the
there too.
original.
That's a suburb like strip mall type entertainment complex
Yeah.
to our friends. But so that was like important because we had this movie night, going out to eat, but then also just like going to the zoo, like those kinds of things. Like we went to the zoo in LA. There's a zoo here, so there's kind of like just continuing normal things that we would have done in the summer. Help them
Absolutely.
just be like, oh, okay, we're here.
And I
This
do
is
think in reality, when it really comes down to it, when you worry so much about your kids getting acclimatized, like if the environment is good and you can find them some friends, your life is not going to be that different here.
right. It's
You're going
not.
to be doing
It
the
really isn't.
same exact thing day to day. You're
Like
going
I
to be getting up, getting food, getting your kids to school, getting them back from school, arguing with them over homework, getting homework done, maybe going to the movies, maybe you go to the beach, maybe you didn't have a beach back home, or maybe you're doing these things. Your
right.
kids are probably arguing if you have more than one. That none of that's changing. Your
Doors are
day-to-day
still
life,
slamming in Spain.
right? Eyes are
For
still
sure.
rolling in Spain.
Yes.
It might be this beautiful place with better food and nice beaches, but the eyes are still rolling.
The
Yeah, I mean,
eyes are
it's like
still rolling.
your day-to-day life is not going to change, and I think that's a really good point that you made, that you can go bowling, you can go to the movies, you can still do all of these things and keep everything, not to keep everything the same, but all those things that whatever it is you like to do wherever you are, you can do here.
Right. Well, the thing is, our lives are completely different, yet they're the same no matter where you are in the world. We're still a family. They still have movies. If you're going to move to Thailand, they have movie theaters and bowling alleys in Thailand. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure of it. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe I think there's a portion. I don't know if it's easier to move if you have more than one kid. When you have one child, you worry, oh my God, they're going to make friends. They don't have the sibling and this, but then you might have siblings that don't get along and fighting, and then that's more stressful for the parents and everybody. So I think it's probably a mix, right?
right. And those problems you had back there, you're bringing with you. You're still the same person. I mean, I think for me, I have a much cheerier outlook now because I'm doing something very exciting in my life that's always been a dream. But,
Right.
life is stressful. I mean, Buddha said life is suffering. It doesn't change. So your outlook on it can change and all of that, but you're still who you are in a foreign country and your kids are still who they are. But, I think, but you can prepare them. You can prepare yourself and prepare your children to however you feel you need to. But it does help to have everyone, or many people on board to
Yeah.
support the decision, especially for your kids to hear it, to be like, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. I think that's the key thing to get from this episode is make sure you have
Yeah.
the people around you that are supporting it.
Yes, and do you feel like, I mean, I think you should, I think, probably we could all pat ourselves on the back. I'm not asking you to find something wrong, but is there anything you would have done differently, or do you feel like, yeah, I think it went pretty smoothly. I think I did the best that I could do.
Yeah, there's nothing I would change except things I can't change, which is I maybe wish I would have moved. I could have moved here, and I wasn't able to moved here a year earlier and put them both into a Spanish speaking school. That's something I wish that
Do you
could
think
have
you
been.
would have put them in a Spanish speaking school if
Yeah,
you'd come
if my
earlier?
older one was, if it would probably been more of a 2 year difference. If my older one was like 12 when we moved here, I think I would have researched that more and probably have done that. Um, but being the age she was at the time, that scared me, and maybe I didn't. But she's very happy where she's at, and they love their
Yeah.
school, and I love their friends, and they have a good group of friends, and so I'm not it's what it is,
And
but
I do feel like if we had decided to go into the Spanish public school system, we may not have ended up in Valencia, and that would have been a bummer. Maybe it would have been
right.
better, or maybe it would have been. I mean, who knows? But we do love Valencia, and we probably wouldn't have ended up here if we were moving into the Spanish school system because it would have been it's taught in Valenciano.
Right.
So and you have to look at that with the different parts of Spain. There are various communities in Spain that have a second language where they teach that in the schools, and they're not teaching Castellano in the schools. So I think had we not gone the route that we went, we may not have ended up here. We would have ended
Right.
up in another part of Spain probably, and then we
Or
would have never met, and your life would have been so much better.
right. So much better. No.
There you go.
That has been a delight meeting you before we moved here and when we moved here. So it's been we would never have had the show if we'd never met. If you'd never
Yeah, there you go.
bugged me on Facebook. Or
Exactly.
answered one of my questions. Now I look back, probably stupid questions.
Yeah. Well, and two, our girls are friends, so that's a friendship for them as well. So it's always nice. I mean, that's always my goal, if it's at all possible, is if Zena has a friend and I like her parents, that is such a win-win for
It
me,
is a win-win,
because
yes.
then we all can go out and do something together, and we can all have a nice time, rather than like, oh, we're gonna go do something with your friend and now you got to come do something with my friends. And it's like, it's really nice when that blends. That's kind of something that I look for as well, but
Right.
that's just a personal sort of preference, I think. But yeah, I mean, we could have done things, I think a lot of things differently, but it worked out. But like I said, both of us did things incredibly differently, and we've sort of ended up in the same place, which is interesting.
Right.
So
No
yeah,
regrets.
no regrets. Ask the kids. We'll have to do a podcast of just the girls talking to each other
we have to
and be
see if
like,
one day
oh
our
my
kids
God.
would ever want to be on board on coming on the show, right?
Yeah.
I got them to be able to agree that I was able to talk about them, but we'll see if we're ever.
But if they actually want to be on it,
Yeah.
I think the initial move was quite hard for Zena and for all of us, I think, because we all missed the people that we were there. So I think the initial few months before you have your new friends in your new place, I think are quite tough. I mean, in reality, that is, you're leaving good friends behind, and it doesn't make sense.
So
you know.
let us end the episode on this thought then, because I do see a lot of people in different groups will say that people, and I've noticed it's a lot with people who've moved here by themselves too, right? They have a 6 month what did I do, like the honeymoon's over, reality set in, they get homesick. And did you have that? Did you have a homesick moment or anything? And it was weird because you had COVID. You were locked inside. I mean, even if you were homesick, you couldn't go back anyway, so you were trapped, right?
No,
So,
for me, it was kind of nice to be back in Europe and be able to, well, and eventually be able to go back and forth to England. So I did not have that. I think as soon as, and because of how we landed here and people were so nice, we actually did meet some friends quite quickly that have become lifelong friends. So I think for us, I didn't have that. I mean, I still miss my friends from there. But I had already moved from LA to DC, so I already had friends in other parts, and I had already moved from England to America. So I was very used to that feeling of being somewhere that I wanted to be, that I had chosen to be, and making new friends there and getting on board with that while still missing the friends that I had in other places. But I was also now moving closer to some friends and family, and so
Right.
no, I did not personally have that, but I could see how you would have that if you have maybe never moved before and don't know that feeling very well and not prepared for it.
I'll agree with you because it's been the same for me. I moved around a lot as a child and was always kind of excited for the next move. So, and friendships have always been kind of like, that's my one possession I feel in life are my friendships. I keep
Yeah.
friends for a long, for life, I hope,
And you can make new ones, and I
and I
think
know I
that's
can- yeah.
something. Yeah.
And so when we moved here, I made friends like you. I made friends with other people that I still have lunch with or coffee with, once a month or something like that. So I do get that kind of grown up talk, conversation out. But yeah, I didn't have a what did I do kind of moment. The only time I had it was the first real night here. It was the next night, and I remember we were sitting on the Grand Via at an outside restaurant, and everything was relaxed. The bags were there, things
you're
were
like,
ordered. And we were sitting there, and it was 973 million degrees outside, and I'm sweating and having a Fanta, and we're eating, and I looked around, and that's the first time it had hit me in a year and a half of planning this, of what the curse word did I just do? I'm looking around at the trees and the beautiful buildings, and I'm like, this isn't a vacation. What did I do? And I was at this quick moment, like, this could move into a panic attack, and I'm not going to let it. And it didn't.
Right.
Like, but I had that thought in my head, this will not be a panic attack. This will not be a panic attack. Then I smiled and finished my Fanta, and we went home and had the air conditioning, and it's been fine ever since. Not that everything's peaches and cream. I mean, there are stresses. It's still living life.
Yeah, I think I had that on the plane, because that was the first moment of
stop. That was your stop.
That was
moment.
the first stop moment, right?
Yeah.
And I have and I think there is a moment where, like, you are packed, and even up until getting on the plane, you got your ticket, you got to check in your bags, the 500 bags that we bought. Like, there's all these things that have to happen still. And when you sit on the plane and you're sitting there and you're like, oh, we just, like, wow, we're like on a plane going somewhere, and
like, if
we're
this
not going
flight's
back
canceled,
there.
we got nowhere to go, right?
But once we got to Spain and we went into lockdown like 5 days later, there were no planes going out, so it didn't matter whether you wanted to be here or not. You were going to be here. So we were, at that point, we were locked in literally to the plan. So at that point, that even if you wanted to have a panic attack, it wasn't going to achieve anything.
Right.
But I think for me, the plane was the first moment where it was like, like, you're breathing and you realize what you've done.
Right.
Yeah. Because there's so much planning, right? So much planning.
So much running around, so much getting rid of, so much everything.
Purging your stuff, all these
everything.
things. Yeah.
And luckily, I had said this in, I think, our first episode, that, I had a friend, we took the boat over, and a friend came with me and held my hand. So even then, I didn't have a breathing moment.
You didn't have it then.
It was not until we were here and settled, and we had
and we had very mixed emotions too, because when we were on the plane and the plane took off, I was also incredibly relieved, because that was the time in March, the beginning of March 2020, when I was 100% sure they were going to start canceling flights. Mm-hmm. So the fact, and I had considered changing our flight to leave earlier, which would have been very difficult and impractical, but because we were fine-tuned right to the last minute, really, of how things and people we were going to see and all this kind of stuff. So I was also incredibly relieved that our plane took off and we were on it. So there was a lot of emotions at that moment. But I think one of them definitely was like, oh my God, it's really happening. Like, because you're so enwrapped in everything. It is hard to really feel those emotions until, either you're here and that first moment of silence, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Or the kids have gone to bed. And you're like,
and no regrets.
Yeah.
So I think.
Yeah.
No regrets is how we're going to say for this. It will all work out, and I hope some of our tips have helped you. If you're worried about your family and your children, if you're thinking about moving here or anywhere in the world or across town, it's similar. It's more drastic when you change countries, but
just planning and making sure everyone's on board, I guess. There you go. Enjoy it. It's going to be great. Yes.
Well, until next time. And between now and then, there'll probably be a Poco. So we hope you enjoy those our new episodes.
Absolutely. Enjoy. All right. Bye.
Hey, can't get enough of us? Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Ospain Podcast.
And on our website, ospain.com, which we will be updating with exciting new things as we grow.
We would love for you to message us with any topics you would like to hear about.
See you next time.
Bye.